Josh is going to be with us again. Sam Blackshear, of course, the CTO of Mysten Labs, and he's of course famed for his creation of the Move language. Supra is going to be joining us as well, and then Vineeth from Aptos. So this is going to be an amazing segment. Okay, and I'm now going to hand over to Nolan. Nolan, are you here? Let's have a look. Nolan.
Yep, I'm here.
All right. So Nolan, straight over to you. Nolan is with us at Supra discussing the future of Move. Let's go, man.
Yep, thanks for passing it over. Let's go ahead with segment 6, the future of Move. As said, my name is Nolan Edwards. I'm a developer advocate over at Supra. And as a Move-based network, we believe it's important for the industry to continue to come together like this and collaborate to drive Move forward within the industry. A very exciting segment we have today. We have 4 passionate individuals ready to discuss Move and where we go from here. I would like to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves and what they're working on. So Josh, you're not a new face around here. You've had a few segments before, but for the listeners just joining in, would you like to start off with your introduction?
Sure. Yeah. Happy to be here. And that last event was great. I'm looking forward to those folks leveraging our technology, breaking our chain. I'm sure you'll break it, but we'll scale it and then we'll constantly make it better. So yeah, really great. Now, Move language, I'll just be really clear. It is my opinion that it may take 10 years, but I do believe Move language will become the dominant smart contract language in the space. I believe that it's going to bring forth a paradigm that Web2 developers, that they come to the space, are a little bit more familiar with. This notion of smart contract, and the smart contract has all the addresses of the accounts versus an object-oriented model. It's going to be more familiar, and Move is based off of this. We have been following our Facebook teams back when they're at Facebook, and it's even back then, 2019 even, I remember talking to John, I was like, dude, this is going to be huge. And of course, they have some of the best back in the day. They have just so much talent in finding folks that have brilliant ideas. It's such a pleasure to be even on the same stage with Sam Blackshear, the original founder and creator and designer of Move language, and the value that he is creating through innovating this language and pioneering it further is incredible. And I just want to be clear about the fact that yes, Supra is going to market with Move language because we believe in it, but we are also going to be trying to support multiple languages. But that said, I still believe that Move language is going to make a huge impact. And yeah, it's just such a pleasure to be talking to folks from both Sri and Aptos. I have tremendous respect for you folks. I actually believe that you guys are among the top teams ever in the space, both researchers and engineers.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think a belief we have at Supra is always learning, always keeping your minds open and surrounding yourselves with people that can always progress everything forward. This is a great opportunity to keep the ball rolling. Dr. Joshi, you're up if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone. So I'm Saurabh Joshi. I'm Director of R&D at Supra. And yeah, about Move. So as Joshua correctly mentioned, that in a long run, usually the language that brings more sort of order from the world of chaos, it's going to shine. For example, for Rust, it is now well documented that number of memory-related bugs and other things have reduced. And I believe that Move will play a similar role in Web3 ecosystem. And that is what I think that people eventually realize. For example, let's look at JavaScript, right? Such a large ecosystem, very popular language. But slowly now people are saying that, okay, yeah, JavaScript is there, but let's move towards TypeScript because type system brings more order, more safety and things like that. And I believe that is what Move has to offer. And another thing that in particular, see, I have almost 2 decades of background of program analysis and formal verification. I think I myself have designed some such formal verification engines. And Move, it was not an afterthought of doing this proving kind of a thing. So it came with Move Prover. And that I really appreciate because you see that when there are bugs out there, you try testing it, and if you could not find bug, you don't know whether the bug is there or not. But when you run it through a prover, in some sense, you get a certificate that the program is correct with respect to all of its specifications. So these are the things that I believe sets Move apart from all of that. And I believe that's why for Web3, where we are handling real money, is going to play a very key role in this space.
It's a great point. I think, what's the word with JavaScript? I believe it was created within 10 days and it grew into such a large ecosystem. So I can only imagine how much Move is going to grow as we continue to progress forward through Web3. I think we just had Vineeth hop in. Vineeth, welcome to the space. Glad you can make it. If you could just give us a chance to introduce yourself, the floor is yours.
Great. Yeah. Thanks. I was trying to figure out how the X spaces work. It's my first time on this. But yeah, my background is programming languages, formal verification, compilers, working on things like static analysis, which reason about correctness of programs and security. And I joined the Aptos Move compiler team about a year back. And I've been working on a new version of the compiler and together with my team on a bunch of new Move features and trying to make Move both ergonomic and make it more expressive to meet the new demands of this fast changing domain.
That sounds very exciting. Honestly, I'm a bit jealous. I wish I could get my hands on something like that.
Yep.
So definitely, last but not least, Sam, if you could take it away, the floor is yours.
Yeah, of course. Hey, I'm Sam Blackshear. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Mysten Labs and the creator of Move. Been working on Move since early 2018. And these days I work on Move, I work on Sui Network, I work on Walrus decentralized storage. And so yeah, like with Move from the very beginning, like when I joined the Libra team and had the task to figure out what to do with smart contracts, like the thing we're looking at is, okay, what other smart contract languages are out there? Is it possible to take a general purpose language and try to shoehorn it or restrict it or expand it to turn it into a smart contract language? And really just trying to understand the essence from looking at code people were writing, mostly in Solidity, of what do these programmers want to do? Like, how are the existing languages helping them? How are they hurting them? What's like the idealized form of what you'd be able to do? And so we really focused around what are the right abstractions for doing what you do with smart contracts. So we settled on resources, like a nice first-class representation, or we call them objects, a nice first-class representation of assets of something that you work with in the in Move land, but then also you show to the end user that have transferability that are first class, can be passed into functions, returned from functions, stored in data structures, and nested inside each other. And then also, like, you want these abstractions to be safe, of course. The thing that's very different about Move compared to other smart contract languages or conventional programming languages is that it has this inherent scarcity features. So you can have objects that you can say, this cannot be copied, or this cannot just be dropped on the floor. It has to be explicitly destroyed. When I pass it into a function, it's moved from the caller into the callee. All the sort of things that you would have for physical intuitions about ownership and transfers, but to transport it into the digital realm. So we've done a lot of work to first build out the bytecode format, build the verifier around it, then build out a source language that is getting better and better all the time, building out the tooling around it. And part of the vision for Move Beyond Safety was always that it would be platform agnostic. I think with the EVM, it's so overfitted to the details of the way Ethereum works, like in terms of the transaction format and the signature scheme. So if you want to build a new network that's based on the EVM, it's really hard to make different design choices at the network level than Ethereum did. And it's so important in this space, I think, to try out lots of new blockchain designs that scale better, that have different kinds of login formats, accessibility. You want to give people that flexibility. And so that was something we always wanted with Move. So I'm really happy to see, of course, I work on Sui, but I love that there are other Move networks that are taking different directions and trying different experiments in terms of what they're trying to do at the network level. And I think that's really valuable for the space. And where we sit at now, like Move is the fastest growing smart contract language. The Move is 7% of the crypto market share. I think Sui is about 5 of that or something. And I think it'll continue growing a lot. It's exciting to see these new Move networks launching. It's very gratifying to put in a number of years on this and starting to see it get some attention.
If I recall, the last time you and I spoke, it was a little over a year ago now, Sam. It was during one of our podcast sessions, one of our Supra sessions. Time has flown by, so I think it was a year.
Yeah, that sounds about right. On Web3, a year can feel like 5 years or a day, depending on your mood. But yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so to any of our listeners, I highly recommend checking out that video on our YouTube channel. I believe the video is called like Supra X Mysten Labs. It's filled with a lot of great information directly from Sam himself. So following this space, go check it out. Now, one of the things I wanted to actually address was, I think it's important before we can discuss the future, is we have to understand the past. I think, Sam, you just gave a great rundown of why you felt the need to make Move or work on Move, where it came from. But I do have one question for you. What was the main motivator behind creating Move? Was there like a single event within the industry that you felt like, okay, enough is enough? Or is it just really stemming from like a passion of yours, like for the space or a certain industry?
Yes, I think it was actually a convergence of both of those things, and also why it was such a great project. Like for me, my background before Move is I spent my whole career in programming languages. I did a PhD studying analysis and verification. I worked on some really scalable and precise static analysis tools at Facebook. So I spent my whole career thinking about software safety and have a lot of passion for it, and have worked mostly on the prevention side, but have always been interested in the language design side. And then when I started looking at Solidity and other smart contract languages, like the biggest problem is that this is a domain where security is maybe more important than anywhere else, because you're putting code in the open that anyone can call that directly manages money, and the consequences of vulnerability are that someone is going to steal your money. So it's very highly motivating for attackers. And this isn't theoretical. Like this is what was happening in the space in 2018, and what's still happening today. I think it's a crisis that we just deal with or write off as a cost of doing business, but it really holds back the number of programmers that are willing to try to write smart contracts. And I think the ambition of the applications that people are trying to write. So I think it really comes down to that, like security and safety, both that being a personal passion, and I think a problem was super urgent for the space then and still is today.
I totally agree. It's definitely one of the topics we're going to hit just in a little bit too. Like we need to open the floodgates, as was mentioned in the previous segment. We need to bring on mass user adoption and addressing these security vulnerabilities, addressing this loss to funds. It's going to be a huge thing for us to bring new users in. So it's really reassuring to know that we have so many passionate individuals here driving the industry forward. And to open the floor to the rest of us, I think between the four of you here, we have 3 separate Move networks. I want to ask, what is the need for slightly different versions of the Move VM? What is the main driving factor here?
I can go first, if that's okay. So I think one of the key things is allowing for innovation in the Move space. So this is, I think, one of the very few places where you get to control the source language, the actual virtual machine, and kind of add all these really nice type system checks and verification and so on, so that it's very ergonomic and easy for a developer, where they don't have to worry about 20 different ways to shoot themselves in the foot. But this also means that there are slightly, like again, either necessitated by the blockchain requirements or necessitated by like different language design philosophies or capabilities. There are different features you would want to add. So I think like having, even though I think a large percentage of the VM is the same, there's still important differences, 20% or so. For example, Aptos recently added a limited form of safe dynamic dispatch. We are also adding this way of being able to precisely express resource access control with small notation that you can expressively add. And I think both, like at least 2 of us added like enums, but there are slight differences in kind of their use cases and so on. So I think it allows for this kind of innovation. And this, I think, has happened in a lot of other languages that have evolved, like Scheme had God knows how many variants. And it's, I think, really difficult to evolve a single language this early in the space. That's my view about it. So I think it was a good thing in that you can move forward, do, as Sam mentioned before, try out these various experiments and be bold in your language design choices and try things out.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a deliberate consequence of wanting to be platform agnostic. Like either you overfit to the way the system architecture works and the language is the same for everyone, but then you can't experiment. And then if the system architecture isn't right to support large applications or big TPS, large users, low latency, all these things, then you're stuck. And I think that's where the EVM is today. So I think with Move, the key thing is to keep as much as possible the same, but as Vineeth was saying, give people the flexibility to try out different things. And so like for us with Sui, like the key things that we've worked on are worked on the original, of course, VM at Facebook, like the Move design, all of this stuff. And we had this older data model where it looks more like the account system of Ethereum. You have this notion of accounts and the instructions, like dynamically read the accounts. And we looked at a lot of that, and you have to check that you have permission to access the account and all these sorts of things. And we looked at this code and we're just like, okay, a lot of programs look the same, where they start off by reading something, checking a permission, doing the actual logic, and then putting it back at the end. Or like, what, maybe we can just get rid of those parts, have the system do them, and then the programmer is just free to pass in the objects they need directly, and the system will take care of reading it, doing all the account checks and that sort of thing. And that's where the idea for this object-based data model behind SWE was born. We're like, we want to make code as short as possible. We want to get rid of the potential vulnerability of missing access control checks as much as we can. And we just want a single common abstraction throughout the stack for Move programmers, but also that folks work with at the front end level that you show in wallets, that you show in explorers. And then we've added several other features that sort of build on top of that, like programmable transaction blocks, which is this thing where in a transaction, instead of calling one function, you call a function that takes typed objects as input and then returns typed objects, which can then be plugged into the next move call and then maybe into a third one. And we allow up to 1024 of those. And you can build these dynamically on the front end. And that's definitely one of the favorite features of SWE developers, because they can basically write and move code on the front end without publishing new smart contracts, but in a language they're familiar with. It just looks like TypeScript to them. Sometimes they don't even know that they're writing move. And then also dynamic fields, which lets you create these rich hierarchies of objects. Like you can have a character, a hero in a game, and they've got a sword and that's stored as a dynamic field. And then they've also got a shield, and then these things can be swapped around. So like lots of NFT collections and games are playing with this. So yeah, I think it's important to be able to have the flexibility to play with these different things, both at the sort of like system architecture level for performance, but also in terms of expressivity and enabling new applications.
Supra is so privileged to be standing on the shoulders of giants. You guys have trailblazed and have been very detailed oriented and empathetic, actually, and just conscious about the decisions we're making. We have two great teams that are pioneering this, and we're just like, wow, we love everything you guys are doing. Really, where you've taken Move in the last year alone are huge conceptual reaps, and it's just, these are things that frankly I don't know if anyone else could have done. So we are privileged to follow in your footsteps. We are also studying you deeply in terms of the design decisions and concepts you guys are thinking through. And both of you, Aptos, SWE, and you folks have different set of user bases. You guys are growing huge. You're going to be huge. And we are also just at this stage, I would say, just so privileged to be right behind you, to watch your decisions. There's not many opportunities in life where the original creator is so open and willing to share and have the foresight to develop something that is going to be multi-platform. And maybe Supra does create something eventually. I would love for us to contribute back to you folks. Maybe we stumble across an idea that you haven't thought of and that you can adopt as well. So just want to say thank you. And in terms of what Supra is going to be doing differently, I'll have Dr. Joshi share more about that. But since we are trying to be a multi-VM platform itself, there are going to be some nuances in how we communicate with different VMs. And we also want to, when SWE's doing this, has been doing this very well recently, rolling out their own bridge, right? And Aptos is rolling out their own BRF. And Supra also wants to do, or has designed our system to do the same. And along the way, we may come across some framework changes that we may have to make to fit our paradigm and structure. But certainly, I do hope that we can contribute back to the Move ecosystem. I am confident that the work that you guys have pioneered is going to be massive. I would love to hear Dr. Joshi's point of view.
Yeah, definitely. I think that quite a lot of thing is going to be driven by what the community wants. So I believe that we would have to modify certain aspects of VM and interpreter to support our vision for containers. So I think that would be a point where our low-level implementation would differ quite significantly from Aptos or SWE and other things that are out there. And yeah, I think that from the language-wise and safety-wise, it's a great programming language. And the places where I see that things can improve generally in the Move ecosystem place is, see, I also come from the same background of program analysis and formal verification. And I think that we all know that programmers really don't like to write formal specifications. I think that the tooling in that area, for example, something like maybe a symbolic execution engines as opposed to this formal Move prover kind of thing, or maybe fuzzer, etc. I think that those are very sparse, and certainly we as a community can work toward improving those aspects so that not only that the language is really good from the type system perspective, but also we cover all the other bases. Yeah.
So it seems like we've discussed like minor differences between the VM, but correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like we're deviating fast for how early Move is in its lifespan, which is honestly pretty impressive. And I think it speaks towards the overall adoption of Move. I think this raises the question for the future of Move. If we diverge from one another very dramatically, is this kind of a problem that we need to solve for and plan ahead? Or is this something that we think is just the beauty of the industry? Like give developers more choices to choose the VM that they wish to work on?
And I think it's just a trade-off ultimately. Like you can trade off for innovation and experimentation, which is the way we've set things up. And then that means you get to do parallel experiments. There can be cross-pollination. Maybe there's a lot of cross-pollination. Maybe you're actually exploring very independent paths. Maybe some branches die off. Maybe some come together. I think we don't really know, but it's not the sort of thing that you can really curate. And so I think the thing to do is just to lean into the advantages of this model and let people do the experiments that are the most interesting and most productive that programmers are asking for.
It sounds like with what we mentioned in the last question is just letting the market decide, see what works, see what people like, see what results in the best improvement for the industry, and keep it going.
Right. So I think that, for example, in C++, right, C++ committee has been following that convention for years, that basically let the community have it first. People start writing things as library and then they write proposal. It comes as a standard part of the language once it gains sufficient traction. And yeah, I think that could be a good approach for a language to evolve.
Also, just wanted to quickly chip in about one of the very interesting points Saurabh made about specifications. I think this is really cool that the language, as it was being developed, was co-designed along with those formal specifications and the prover and the specification language kind of baked in. And I think like the writing the specifications is still a major issue, not just for Move, but just generally in the formal verification space. But I think a couple of like recent advances might be interesting over here. So one is the use of AI code writers to automatically help write specifications potentially from natural language, because you have this nice backing of the prover to actually check against it. And then second, there was actually some really interesting work on like adding specifications in the solidity space, where they figured out some of the hardest parts with respect to specifications are these things called loop invariants. And they did a large scale analysis of solidity programs and found that people only write so many kinds of loops. And therefore you can try to auto infer them, say, for example, in a general purpose language like C++. So I think all of those kind of gives me hope that, given that like multiple people here are from the formal verification industry, it's a dream come true to have this actually work and used by tons of people and be part of the core infrastructure. Yeah, so I think I have a query in that regard. So regarding this loop invariant, so are they have a bunch of patterns and use Houdini type of algorithms or Exactly. Yep. That's what they did. So they found that there's only 4 or 5 patterns like solve 90% of the solidity use cases or something. This was a paper a couple of years back in PLDI, I think, from Ishil Dilik's group. But yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's what you mentioned. Yep.
So we're coming in towards the end of the segment, but I think a really important topic that we need to hit is how can we push the adoption of Move? What is something we can all do together? What is something we need to do individually? Open those floodgates, drive the adoption of Move forward, and bring on this mass user base that we really need.
Let me jump in real quick. I want to pay homage to Sam and Sui and Kavri Aptos as well, and with teams. More or less, I want to say thank you for being open and to actually come and join us, MoveCon, over the years, multiple times. This spirit of collaboration, I think, needs to be promoted throughout the industry at large. The Ethereum community has that, and the Move community needs to have this as well. And we have to talk about and be repetitive on the fact that this is going to be a safer world that you use Move more. And of course, there's going to be growing pains along the way, and it's not a full panacea, but nonetheless, this is going to invite a lot of Web2 folks, and we have to just continue to collaborate and share ideas. And also, as you guys are exemplar doing, listen to your users and create products that and services and functionality that they want. I just want to say that, Sam, honestly, you are probably the biggest beacon in the Move Lang world, not only because the innovations that sweet, but also because of your collaborative spirit and your ability to work with and to be consistent with helping the emerging ecosystem grow. And I do want to let it be known that Supra hopes we can give back as well. Hopefully we come across something that is going to be super useful for you guys as well. So I would say the collaborative kind of culture and the kind of point of view that we're in it together, it really goes a long way.
Joshua, I really appreciate the kind words. And I also totally agree with you on the collaborative culture part and openness being like a huge element of what we need to do. To share some additional thoughts too, I think one thing that we can do that people don't do as often in Web3 is just be really intellectually honest and not overclaim and not promise the move is going to eliminate all bugs or solve all your issues or like immediately make you a 10x better programmer, but just be super specific and I think honest and technically accurate about what the advantages are and what makes people want to try it. Because I think everyone in space gets so tired of the shilling, or even if something is actually true, it pushes people away. And so I think being very serious, very precise, very specific, appealing, like engaging in deep technical conversations instead of like spouting the same talking points over and over, like these things can really help to bring in the good programmers, the serious programmers who are attracted by the promise of Move, both the tech and the vision. And this is a slow thing, but it really snowballs. And it also means that the community you get is just the people you want, like the strongest folks who then attract other A players and more A players. So I think we've done a good job of that so far. Like I'm super impressed with the average quality of the Sweet developer community, the Move developer community broadly. And I think like we just need to be careful to continue growing in that same way. Keep the brand strong, keep the rigor strong. That's what makes Move what it is.
I think it sounds like we're aiming for steady progress rather than bloating it up, making it something it's not. Slow and steady wins the race. Keep pushing, keep it natural. I think that's a great point. I think that's something we'll continue to embody at Supra and keep driving forward. Is there anything else anyone would like to chime in? We're a few minutes over the segment, but we can spare an extra minute or two if anyone wants to add any last additional comments.
So I have a question. Maybe Sam and Vineeth can share their take on it. As far as the programming language is concerned, right? One thing is about flexibility, what you can do, how you can mutate states and whatnot. And programmers do really love that. On the other hand, there is a safety aspect of it where the compiler will tell you, no, you cannot do this. And that can maybe put off some of the people from adopting it. So just wanted a comment on how to strike a right balance on this trade-off.
It's a great question. I think it's one of the core challenges in Move language design. So the way I view this is like safety is the most important feature of Move, and minimality is the second most important feature. So minimality in terms of there's exactly one way to solve the problems that are important instead of having a wide variety of ways that confuses programmers where there are different trade-offs in terms of safety or other things. And then I think expressivity comes after those, but of course is also very important. So what that implies, and this is the way we've always grown Move, is that you understand what use cases you need to do really well. You build the safe core abstractions for those. You build them to be safe, but also very powerful. And then you look very carefully at where folks are pushing up against the boundary of those. And then usually maybe they'll ask for something very specific. And I think usually when programmers give feedback, you want to listen to it, but usually you don't want to listen to what they're asking for. You want to listen to what's like the core problem that led to them for ask for this, and then aggregate this across many requests and many use cases. And I think that's where you start to see, oh, this is something where we do want to add a new feature in this area. Let's talk about how to make it cohesive with the other features. Let's talk about how to make it safe and do that very deliberately. So I think doing that while also keeping up the pace of rapid innovation and also making sure that things stay as safe as they are or even get safer over time is the core like tension and challenge of Move language design.
Yeah, I think I agree with Sam. So one really nice thing about how Move was developed initially and has evolved is it started off from really strong foundations and really safe and secure, like the type system abilities and so on that you can build off. So now that you know that you have a safe system, you can try to add expressivity if you can also do that safely and there's the right kind of abstractions that would enable users to build more interesting things. So again, like recently, we've been looking into adding generic dynamic dispatch in a safe manner. but we we currently have an experiment, or it's actually in production, where we allow a limited form of dynamic dispatch, but still prevent like the reentrancy problem. So I think like this initial design of moves where the core was really simple, straightforward to understand, reason about security, safety, has given a really nice foundation for different teams to innovate on various ways to evolve the language.
Just one quick question around this safe dynamic dispatch that you are mentioning. So I understand that basically I believe that there would be some checks that would be done at runtime, but does it take away the ability for the move prover to reason over such constructs?
Very interesting question. So we have some additional language extensions that are implemented to actually specify various properties that you can assume a particular function will have. This is called resource access control, and it's AIP, or what we call the Aptos improvement process, already implemented. So that in combination, I believe, should be able to prove additional things, even despite dynamic dispatch. I need to go back and reconsider if you'll be able to prove everything that you would generally be able to do in the fully static version. I don't believe so, but you still will be able to prove useful things when you combine like this resource access control along with dynamic dispatch. But yeah, this is all, I think, at the edge. Like we are doing the design and experiments right now for all of this as we speak.
I think that's about all the time we have allocated for this segment. I just want to say thank you to everyone. That was it was a great talk. It was a great conversation. I think personally, I'm a heavy advocate for learning and surrounding yourselves with people that are honestly smarter than you. And it's very impressive to be surrounded by people that are so much further in their career than I am. And I look forward to seeing how this ecosystem grows and how I can improve individually and see where we all go through the future.
Thanks so much for having us. This was great.
Of course. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. That was amazing to hear the learnings of what you guys have been through as you develop moves, the move ecosystem, what you guys have been up to at Sui and Aptos. So thank you so much, Vineeth, and to Sam. And then, of course, to our own team, Saurabh and Nolan, thank you. Really appreciate what you guys are doing for us at Supra. I'm excited to see how our ecosystem evolves.